That was a nice move by Pipkins, taking it right to the rack himself. Wide open three, left wing, and it's good. Nylon, the dunk likes that, Matt.
A three from the right side, and it's good! The one, Pipkins, the man, yet again.
Hello and welcome to The Flex. I'm Matt St. Jean.
And this is Joe Howie.
And Joe, the Friars did it again. An 88-71 loss at the hands of the Alabama Crimson Tide. And once again, we're looking at a slow start for Ed Cooley's squad with bad non-conference losses going into conference play with a couple more games left. Feel like I'm reading the same story over and over and over again. It's Groundhog Day. We just can't get out of this loop. This is frustrating. Joe?
Yeah, Matt, I think a great comparison that even if you're a Friars fan or not, you're gonna have to understand this on some degree, is that April, May feeling from this past year when we were in the strictest of lockdown and you woke up and you did the same thing day in and day out. That's how Friar fans have felt for the past, 4 or 5 seasons. You come in with a sheepish non-conference performance. You make a little bit of noise here and there in the Big East, and then you sit sweating on Selection Sunday waiting to see if you made it or not. And right now, it's almost as if Ed Cooley is photocopying the same story and producing on Fox Sports 1 because that's what we're watching. And I get it, it's one loss, but it's one loss that comes less than 48 hours after a very similar loss in the same week in the same tournament on the same floor. So it's very disturbing to see a bounce back win basically equate to nothing.
Yeah, it's hard to fix those. I mean, you come in, you have a terrible game against an inconsistent Indiana team. And I'll give credit to Indiana and Alabama. Both of them played very well. It's tough to fix the problems that you had on Monday by Wednesday. The Friars figured a lot of stuff out against Davidson, and they got off to a hot start. It was an 8-0 run to start the game for Providence. You end up losing the game by 17 points. And the largest lead for Alabama, it got out to 23 at one point. But the Friars completely and totally lost control of a game that they really had a good shot at certain points in it. They were not overwhelmingly outplayed. It was just chips off the block, chips off the block, chips off the block. Suddenly you're down 10, and then Alabama hits 3 threes in a row. That's the dagger. Game over. You're going home. You know that's it. If we're going to look at the stat line here just real quick. Team highs David Duke with 19 points. You've also got Nate Watson with 17. Gant led the team with 4 rebounds. He had 4 rebounds at halftime, didn't get a single one in the second half. David Duke also had 4 rebounds. And Duke with 6 assists led the team. Bynum with 4. Friars shot 42% from the field, 5 of 23 from beyond the arc, 20 of 27 from the free throw line with 9 turnovers on offense, and got out-rebounded 48-28.
Whew. Wow,
it's a lot.
For a team that entered the season under the stigma that we were going to be a rebounding and defensive nightmare for our opponents. You take one look at this game and you take one look at that Indiana game and you say, man, what was Ed Cooley talking about? Because this game and the Indiana game, we looked lackluster on defense, and to be quite honest with you, it didn't look like anyone except for maybe David Duke wanted to get a rebound. It's disgusting. You pride yourselves on being one of the longest and one of the most physically dominant teams in the Big East, and then you're coming out and you're getting out-rebounded by nearly 20? I mean, come on. And when you've got a force in the paint like Nate Watson, and you've got these 6'8", 6'9" guys coming off the bench, you should be stripping the board for rebounds every chance you get. But Alabama, who's a notorious three-point shooting team, they're not even an inside-out team. They're just, we're going to come and we're going to sling it from beyond the arc. They're out-rebounding you? Come on.
And it's not like you didn't know this was going to be the case. either. I mean, this is who Alabama is, and I mean, I think there's two big sequences that bother me in this game. The first one, we're going to go to what I mentioned before about the 3 straight threes for Alabama. That came when the Friars were in a 2-3 zone. The weakness of a 2-3 zone is the wings for 3-point shooters. I know that this is what the Friars like to do on defense. Why you're going to sit back in that and play it when the team is that hot against you and is hitting shots from the perimeter and from the wings, I don't know. All 3 of those looks for Alabama came from that spot. And you're getting it just from simple ball screens or pick and roll, easy, wide open shots. And you know if the Friars got those looks, they'd miss them, but they're never going to get those looks because they don't play offense that way. And on defense, the defense not prepared for it. You're going out there with a defensive call that gives you a worse chance at defending what Alabama's going to bring you. And that, I mean, the players did not execute today, 100%. But Ed Cooley is not putting them in a good spot there either.
Yeah, that's you painted the picture perfectly, Matt. It's the players have to execute, but it goes back to the top. And if you're in a defensive setting where you're not going to be in the right spot to prevent them from shooting threes, well, then you have to take a look in the mirror and think, what am I doing wrong? And I'm speaking about Cooley, of course. And just a side note so everyone gets this clear, Matt and I are 100% not on the fire Ed Cooley train. And if
No.
you are on that train, if you're on that train, stop listening to the podcast right now. It is more than okay to be critical of a coach without saying you have to fire him.
Yeah.
So I just want to put that disclaimer out there for all those people who get trigger happy on Twitter. But anyway.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You could say
None
your
of
point.
none of these problems are unfixable. And I'm going to talk about some other stuff here. It's just it's a combination of bad decisions, execution. We know they're fixable. Why do we know they're fixable? Because this is what, the 3rd or 4th straight year that Providence has dealt with the exact same things in non-conference play. We fix them every season, but you fix them 4 games into the Big East schedule. And it gets a little tiring when you're putting yourself in that same spot year after year.
Right. And I think that's what we're getting at here is that if we know Ed Cooley and we know the way that he coaches his team, he damn sure is going to fix these problems. That's non-negotiable. He's going to study the tape. He's going to study every team in the Big East, and he's going to make sure that this isn't a problem that is reoccurring. But from a fan's perspective, it is very, very, very aggravating to watch the same thing happen year in and year out.
It's so frustrating. The other play I wanted to mention that just irritated me. 15 minutes left in the game. This is when Alabama and Providence were basically trading buckets, just going back and forth. So you have the lead 11 for them, 12 for them, down to 11, 10, 9 with 3 free throws from Reeves. Then they hit a 3. Then Duke hits a 3. Then Alabama gets a dunk. We come down. You get the inbounds play. And you design a play for A.J. Reeves for him to get an open look. Like you had brought up just as they ran this play against Marquette last year, and it worked. And it gets the open look for
game-winning
AJ.
play at Marquette.
Mm-hmm. And
The game-winning play.
They get this look to Reeves, and he's fallen backwards on the shot for no reason at all and airballs it. This is the top 50 recruit AJ Reeves, the guy you brought in to be a sharpshooter in a game where you know the other team is going to hit the 3-ball well. And he had a really nice stretch there to start the second half. Ends up 1 of 5 from beyond the arc. You're designing plays for him. He's not hitting them. And that's when he was confident. That's when he got things going. He didn't really play much after that.
When Reeves went on that, I don't know, what was it, 5-7 point run early on in the second half, I was thinking back to what you and I mentioned last night, Matt, about, all right, here we go. This is X Factor AJ Reeves. He's going to come on. He's going to start scoring. We're going to get a couple of stops, and we're going to get back into this. And then he completely woofed that shot, and that was it for him. I mean, he was sidelined for a majority of the final 10, 12 minutes of the game. I will say, I know Ed Cooley likes to go with the guys that are playing well. And when we went on that 14-6 run with about 8 minutes left, he was going to keep that lineup in. But as you got into crunch time, I don't know if it was the smartest idea to keep Bryson Goodine, Alan Breed, Ed Croswell, and Greg Gant on the floor with Duke, just because one, inexperience. If you're within 11 with about 4 minutes left, you're going to want more experienced guys who have been in tight games. And two, I have a bone to pick with Bryson Goodine right now because you turned the ball over and then you sat back at half court and let your man run to the hoop and give off an exclamation point dunk. If I was in the coach's position, I would have called a timeout right there just to make an example of him and bench him. That is completely unacceptable. I
No,
get it, you're down a
you're
lot,
right.
and I get it, the momentum's gone. You do not do that. You don't let your man run up the court and dunk it in your face.
And forget about that part too. You've got Goodine and Breed running the 1 and the 2 at that point at the end of the game. You got Duke shifted down to the 3, and Breed looked good. Breed hit 4 shots, had 9 points, had 3 rebounds. I think he had a bad turnover in there. Nothing spectacular from Breed, but for a freshman in a game like that, he played really well. Goodine, you're a transfer. You couldn't play at Syracuse. You're going to come to Providence, and now you're out there. You're getting outplayed by the freshman, and you give up.
I wouldn't be
What's going on
surprised.
here?
I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see much of him the next couple of games. I mean,
He's got to earn
Cooley
his way
is
back on the floor.
yeah, Cooley is one who will make an example out of you. We saw it last season with Alpha Diallo and Lawan Pipkins. He'll do it just as easily with Bryson.
Mhm.
I mean, props to Alan Breed. He was a bright spot tonight, and I don't think that should go unnoticed because for a freshman playing big minutes in what had the potential to be a strong late game run, hey, hats off to you, man. Those are some onions you're putting out there. You're hitting corner threes. If I was a freshman in college basketball and I was given those opportunities, I mean, take them, and that's what he did. He took the bull by the horns.
He had 9 more points than Jared Bynum did.
Yeah, Jared Bynum, man, that was a tough outing for him.
Yeah.
I want to go back so high on him last night too.
I know. I want to go back to Reeves for one more play, then we'll touch on Bynum. Because
Okay.
Reeves did do one other impactful thing in the second half, which we talked last night about Reeves getting the rebound to basically seal the game, and then not sealing the game by missing the front end of the 1-and-1. Well, he did this.
Mhm.
He gets put back in the game after airballing that 3, gets a turnover, jumps in, intercepts a pass, perfect, throws the ball to Duke in transition, intercepted right away. He had one turnover and 1 steal in the game, and they came about 2 seconds apart. And that's consistent with what we've seen from him, just plays like that. But let's talk about Jared Bynum. 0 for 7 from the field, 0 for 4 from beyond the arc, missed his lone free throw. He had 4 assists, so I'll give him that. Only 1 turnover, 3 fouls. He was minus 14 in 26 minutes. I'm going to be honest, I forgot he was on the team for stretches of this game.
Yeah, he kind of played. I don't really know what to compare him to anything except for a cold Lawan Pipkins from last season, but he played like a very ghost-like position tonight. I mean, didn't really have any impact other than the 4 assists. I mean, every time he took a shot, I almost knew it wasn't going to go in. I mean, the poor kid, but yeah, this was a very tough game for him after what was, a really good performance by him last night. I mean, I really hope he's not hot and cold like this all season because I'm sure if he's hot and cold like this, the team is going to follow suit. But again, a tough outing for the point guard transfer.
It most certainly was. I know a lot of the struggles Pipkins had early on were attributed to the fact that he's a transfer stepping in right away into the very large shoes of Kyron Cartwright. Everybody said coming into the season, Bynum's a guy who's been with the team for a year already. So there's not going to be those hiccups. At points last year when Pipkins was struggling, Cooley hinted that the best point guard on the team wasn't even playing at that point, and the best point guard was Bynum, who they had on the bench. You can't be saying stuff like that and then have him come out and play like this. And I think it says a lot when you have guys at the same position in similar positions with the team come out and start the year so terribly in back-to-back seasons. I think that says a lot more about Ed Cooley than it does about Pipkins or Bynum.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I don't know how, to a certain degree, how much I agree with that because on the same note, you could make the argument that Ed has done a great job cultivating point guards with a very decent sample size and Chris Dunn, Kyron Cartwright, Bryce Cotton, who was a Vincent Council. I mean,
Hmm.
you can make that argument that Ed has done a good job with point guards. I think the point guard position has developed over the year, just as every position on the floor has, where you're not seeing as traditional of table setting point guards as you are now scoring point guards, similar to the role that Pipkins and Malik White played last season. So,
Hmm.
but that's irrelevant to the point. Jared Bynum, I mean, to give him credit, he did have 4 assists tonight. I mean, he's out there to dish the ball, but when your team is looking to buy a bucket and the ball is in his hands, and I mean, you saw the late game play that he made last night that was drawn up for the point guard,
Hmm.
and then tonight he comes out scoreless. You can't help but scratch your head.
That's that's absolutely true right there. I think we can't talk about this game without focusing a little bit more on rebounding. And when I look at the rebounding, Watson 3 rebounds again. He's not your biggest rebounder. The way that Providence plays and the way we're going to be playing opponents, you're supposed to get a lot of production of whoever's playing the 4 in the lineup. Tonight, you got a couple guys there, whether it's Greg Gant, if Chris Monroe slides in there at all, Nichols, Horkler, those 4 guys, I mean, talk about an abysmal showing. You had 3 points from Gant, 6 from Nichols, none from Monroe or Horkler. 4 rebounds from Gant, 1 from Monroe, 1 from Nichols, 1 from Horkler, and that's basically it. No production from that position. Horkler only 6 minutes in a game where you're playing against a very athletic team that likes to shoot the ball. If you can't play defense, I kind of figure you'd at least put in an offensive weapon who can play point forward or power
Yeah,
forward.
I would have. I either Horkler, got a little dinged up in the first half, or he looked at Ed Cooley the wrong way because 6 minutes for that kid is unjustifiable. I mean, Greg Gant, it was the same story as last night. Did some good things in the first half, but then was basically invisible in the second half. I think my favorite moment of the game was when Duke went out of his way to get a steal, and he got the ball and he passed it to Gant, who dropped it out of bounds. And it was not like Gant was smothered by defense; he was standing right there, and I didn't even know how to react to that. That was just I was so angry, and here I am thinking like this is the guy that started all 4 games for us, and yet he's being outplayed by someone who is only playing a very little bit of time tonight.
Yeah, you are spot on there. And I don't really. I mean, what are the answers for the Friars going forward? Let's look to the future a little bit here. Providence plays Fairleigh Dickinson this Saturday back at Alumni Hall. We will do a separate pregame show for that, but what does Providence have to do?
Well, I think first and foremost, we need to realize that the season's not over yet because we are passionate fans and we sometimes, as was warned in our introduction show, let the passion take over in our post-game analysis. So I'm hoping that Ed Cooley will steer the ship correctly and that we can look back at this in a couple weeks and think, oh yeah, that's a funny podcast where we were really angry. I hope it's like that. But realistically, I think what you need to do is you need to get back home where you're comfortable in your own practice gym, where you're actually going to have practices, physical practices to go over things. I think back to back to back games kind of takes away the element of physical preparation. So I think you need to get back home to Providence. You need to physically prepare for who do we have next? Fairleigh Dickinson.
Hmm.
You have to physically prepare for them, and Ed Cooley's got to lay it into his team. He's got to say, this is not a 10 to 13 game non-conference schedule. This is a 6 game non-conference schedule, and we need to come out of here over 500. You have 2 more opportunities left before you enter what was supposed to be one of the most challenging conferences to play in the NCAA. So you need to turn it around. You need to adjust defensively because if you let teams run all over you like Indiana and Alabama did, you're in for a very, very long and cold winter in the Big East. So I think defensively you need to adjust, and the offense will follow suit.
I agree. Ed Cooley has always been defense first with everything, and this is the Friars. It's less so the defense and more so defensive rebounding specifically. I think
Yes.
we saw last year once they got going on the defensive end. You're right. That's where they start hitting their shots and all those games. I mean, of the 6 games that they won down the stretch, 3 or 4 of them they never trailed in. Why? You got a hot start, you played good defense, and then you could just you could just ride that 10-point lead the rest of the game. And that's to an extent, that's what Providence did against Davidson, and that's what Providence did against Fairfield. You build up a 10-point lead some point in the first half, and then you just ride that with good defense. But the other thing,
Also,
it's got to be
yeah.
3-point shooting. The Friars are shooting 23.6% this year so far. They shot 33.2% last year, and that wasn't very good. That was 191st in the country, so it definitely got to improve there. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it doesn't take a fool to realize that if you can get second chance points on offense off of rebounds, that Nate Watson will reach the 30s at some point this season.
He's been a beast
scored in
so
double
far.
digits in all 4 games. He is the shining spot on this Friars team offensively and defensively. It's a shame tonight he had a hot start and then was sidelined to foul trouble, but if you can get second chance points with Nate Watson because of offensive rebounds, we are going to be a scary team.
Yeah, Watson has been. I mean, he has been the bright spot for this team by far. 74 points so far this season, so averaging 6 points short of 20 points per game. He's added. I mean, we talked the other day about how he hadn't added anything to his game. Well, the last 2 games he showed off that mid-range jumper. He has been a treat to watch. So I think, and like I said, he's in contention to be one of the best big men in the country this year. I would hate to see that go to waste because you can't figure out what's going on at the 1, the 3, or the 4 in your lineup, especially after bringing in guys specifically to play those positions.
The 1 and the 4 specifically.
I
think
you got to look at AJ Reeves too. He's had a really rough start.
I know. I think Reeves will come into his own. I still have hope for him. I've seen him play, and I mean, you've seen him play. We've all seen him play. We know what he's capable of. I mean, I think the pressure of being an upperclassman leader is kind of on him right now. I mean, this is an assumption. I don't know him personally, but I hope he gets his head on right because he can be a huge asset for this team.
He definitely can be. Reeves could be the guy to make this thing go, but there's a lot of things that are going to have to make this thing go for the Friars that are not in gear, and the Friars don't have a lot of time to figure out how to get it all going. Friars will take on Fairleigh Dickinson this Saturday at Alumni Hall. I almost said the Dunkin' Donuts Center. At Alumni Hall this year. It's a 4:30 game on this Saturday. Make sure you stay tuned to get our pregame show. I think we'll very quickly give our MVPs for today. I think if we're giving out game balls, it's got to be Nate Watson and Allen Breed. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah.
Those
I
are
thought
our
we
two.
would split 1-1, but yeah, I agree.
I just try to wrap this up real quick here. I think those are the 2 guys that really stood out for the Friars, but a tough 17-point loss to Alabama. Friars fall to 2-2 out of the Maui/North Carolina Invitational. They'll be back in action Saturday. For Joe Howie, I'm Matt St. Jean. Thank you for listening, and as always,
Go Friars.